Hey everybody, this is Dream, and today we have a little six-game slate for DraftKings and FanDuel. Before I get into that, let me get to my game picks. I have the Thunder over the Hornets. I have Cleveland over Indiana. I have Boston over the Clippers. Memphis over Toronto. The Knicks over the Spurs, and Dallas over Houston. So we have just six games, but we do have a lot of injuries. So let's get into the injury report here. We have the Pacers with Halliburton is questionable. For the Thunder, Pokovetsky and Robinson Earl are both out. For the Hornets, Dennis Smith Jr. is questionable. Oubre is doubtful, and Richards is doubtful. For the Raptors, Van Vliet and Achua are questionable, and Porter is out. For the Knicks, Brunson is questionable, and Barrett and Toppin are out. For the Spurs, Keldon Johnson is questionable, Vassell is questionable, and McDermott is questionable. And for the Mavs, DFS is out, Keebler is out, and Bullock is questionable. So we do have a decent amount of injuries that we're going to have to pay attention to. Make sure to check out Discord because we have NBA news here. In fact, we're seeing that now Nick Richards has been upgraded to questionable, so there you go. We get this information from Twitter, and we get this in real time as fast as possible, so we get more and more information every day. Make sure to come check that out. The link is in the description below. Let's get into the team's players I do like today. So we're going to start with guards, and we're going to look at Emmanuel quickly for the Knicks. Now, this is a little bit determining if Brunson ends up being out, but he missed last game and quickly started and played 51 minutes and had a really great game, had 42 fantasy points. He has nice upside. His price has come up ever so slightly, but he's been playing well when he starts. The problem with the Knicks is that they, confabulate their lineup every game, so it's hard to know if he's going to end up starting or not until closer to the match. But if he does start, he's going to be somebody that's in my lineup for sure. Then we're going to look at LaMelo Ball here for the Charlotte Hornets. Now, he's been playing really solid lately. He had one off game against Golden State Warriors, which happens, but his minutes and usage are there, and he's been over 47 fantasy points in 5 of the last 6 games. And as long as he keeps playing that way, he's going to be great. Not only that, but he's playing a nice plus matchup against Oklahoma City. Should be a fast-paced game and should have a lot of scoring. And with some of the injuries to the Hornets, he should get plenty upside here as well. Then we're going to look at Luka Doncic. Now, Luka Doncic just had potentially the greatest game in the NBA in a long time. In the NBA, he basically had a Larry Bird-like game where he scored 60 points, 21 rebounds, and 10 assists. His price point actually didn't move after that game, surprisingly enough. He had 110 fantasy points. Now, in the last 3 games, he's had 60 fantasy points in each of those, and then he's had over 80 in 2 of the last 3. The way he's playing, the way he's shooting the ball, he shot 67% in the last game, 21 for 31. That's actually quite ridiculous. He's been extremely close on getting double-doubles and triple-doubles every single game lately as well. As you can see, most of the season, this has been the kind of the case. Strike while the iron's hot. He's got a nice plus matchup against Houston, who's just terrible against. The only real risk here is that it becomes a blowout. But I do like him overall, and I think he's a great play. The only issue here, really, is going to be with value, but there is actually a decent amount of value on the slate, so he's going to be a guy that I'm definitely going to try to roster. I'm also going to say similar things about Shai Alexander. He's been playing extremely well lately as well. He's been dominant most games for a while, and he's got a nice plus matchup here against Charlotte, especially with the injuries to Charlotte and to the Thunder. He's going to have more opportunity. I think him and Ball are both going to be great plays on the slate. Then we're going to look at forwards here, and we're going to start with PJ Washington. Now, he is going to have more opportunity because of the injuries here, and he's been playing pretty well lately. Now, he is very boomer bust. His floor is high, but his floor is low and his ceiling is high, so he typically doesn't, 5x. He typically either 7x's or 3x's, and so he is a little bit risky, but he's a decent play, especially if you need to save some money. Same with Darius Baisley. He's really only interesting if he starts, but with all the big guys out for Oklahoma City, it is possible he does start. He did start against Miami recently where he got 25 fantasy points, and that's definitely doable in a game like this. And this is actually easier matchup here against Charlotte as well. But I do stress that I won't play him unless he starts. Eric Gordon, it doesn't seem that Eric Gordon is probable today. He looks like he's going to be playing. And as long as he plays, he is scoring dependent, but his price has been dropping due to a couple bad games a week ago. He does get plenty of minutes usually, and he does take a decent amount of shots. He does have to get, at least 10 regular points really to pay off here, but at his price point, he is viable on this particular slate and a good way to pay down in order to afford guys like Luka or Shea Alexander. Then we're going to look at Julius Randle here for the Knicks. He's been playing really well lately. When I looked at his stats, I was shocked that he's had over 48 fantasy points in 9 of the last 11 games. He's been playing like he's on a mission, though they've lost their last 4 games, but he's been playing over 40 minutes a game. He's been dominating both from a scoring perspective and rebounding, and so I expect that to continue here against the Spurs, who are pretty weak, and I expect them to get the win. And it'll be nice to see him have another gigantic game as well. Obviously, his price has come up, so that makes him so he's not a super lock, but he's still viable because of how great he's been playing lately. Then we're going to look at Sochan, sorry, for the Spurs. Now, he's been playing really well since with some of the injuries on the team. I expect that to continue here, especially if Keldon Johnson is out. As long as he starts, he's a viable option on the slate. His price has popped up a little bit. He does need 24 fantasy points in order to 5x, but he's had 3 games over 30 fantasy points in the last 4 as a starter, and I expect him to, especially if those guys are out for the Spurs, I expect him to continue that upside. And then for center, we're going to look at Mike Muscala. Now, he's only interesting if he ends up starting. He's kind of in the same boat as Baisley, so one of them are likely going to start today, and whichever one is going to be a guy that you could consider at center, just because of the price point. Also, Mason Plumlee. Now, if Nick Richards ends up back, then that could hurt him a little bit, but he's been playing pretty solidly, and his price is still pretty decent. It's actually come down a little bit from where it had been at this peak, and so I like him in this matchup against Oklahoma City. He should get plenty of opportunity in this game. So that's what I have on DraftKings. We're going to switch over to FanDuel now. Now, here's the issue with FanDuel. Everybody's more expensive. That's just the straight and narrow of it. Obviously, pricing is a little bit different on FanDuel because of the way scoring is, but overall, I typically like it when the pricing is relatively even between the two sites. And for the last week, FanDuel has just been way more expensive than DraftKings has, so I haven't really been playing much on FanDuel as a result of that. But I still have good plays here, but do take it in stride that everybody is more expensive here. LaMelo Ball is going to be one of my top picks over here. He's been playing really solid the last few games. Now his price point is pretty ideal here for FanDuel, considering the fact that he does get some steals sometimes. But he does need to get close to a double-double in order to pay off here. But he has opportunity, he has triple-double potential, and he has big-time upside, so he's definitely viable on the slate. Emmanuel Quickly is also interesting today. Now, he's not super ideal here on FanDuel because of his pricing differences, but he does have some upside anyway, as long as he ends up getting the start. Then Luka Doncic, what are you going to say about Luka? He's been playing out of his mind lately. Over 100 fantasy points the last game out, and I expect him to have another big game here, especially in a plus matchup against Houston. And then Shea Alexander for Oklahoma City also looks really solid. He's been playing really well lately, and he's got big-time upside. He's also been getting lots of steals and blocks the last few games, and so that really helps boost his scoring. Obviously, his price is not super ideal, but he is playing well. Then we're going to look at Gordon Hayward. Now, Gordon Hayward should get some upside with some of the guys out today. He hasn't been playing particularly well since he came back from injury, but he has upside regardless, and as long as those guys are all out, then he's going to get more minutes and have more usage as well. Then we're going to look at Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum for the Celtics. Now, here's the interesting thing. So they seem to the last 8 or 10 games, they've been switching back and forth on who's having the big game. And if that remains true, then Tatum is the guy today. And so I'm just going to note him for that because he's been the one every other game that's getting over 60. While before that, we can look at Brown and see this kind of the opposite game to game. So if it continues like that, then this is Tatum's game, and so I would definitely take a look at Tatum. But they both look viable, honestly, on the slate against the Clippers, who are not very good lately. Then we'll look at and potentially have a bunch of guys out. We don't even know yet. Then P.J. Washington for the Hornets. Now, he is very boomer bust. He has big-time upside, but he also has very low floor. And so do keep that in mind here. But he is viable on the slate. Julius Randle also looks interesting against the Spurs, who won't have anybody to stop him. He's been absolutely dominating the last 10 games, and I expect that to continue, though they have lost 4 of the last 4 games, but not for a lack of effort on his part. And so I look for him to continue the onslaught. And then at center, right now the best option is Mason Plumlee with Charlotte. He's been playing pretty solid lately. His price is still pretty good. Not as ideal as I'd like it to be here on FanDuel, but he is got double potential in this game, and so I do think he's in a viable spot here against Oklahoma City, who doesn't have anybody that's going to be able to stop him. So with that said, guys, that's what I have. Thank you guys for liking, commenting, subscribing. If you have any comments or questions, feel free to leave them below, and have a nice day, guys.